and I'm going to say, welcome to Federal Resumes. My name is Nancy Quinn, and I want to welcome you to Federal Resumes. We had a previous workshop, actually, part one, I call it, but it's not technically part one. It's the other kind of half of this process. We had it last week. It was called Federal Job Search. So if you took Federal Job Search and now you're taking Federal Resumes, you've got the whole package. But if you didn't take the first one, don't worry. I'll do some recanting of words and information that I gave out before. If you did take the first one, you'll see there's a little overlap just because the consistency is there if we do the little overlap. So again, if you didn't take the first class, don't panic. It's all good. If you did take the first class, great. I'm glad you're back. So again, my name is Nancy Quinn. I am going to shut off my video. And I'm going to say I've worked in career services for more than 15 years. I was a travel agent just outside of college when I got out, and I worked in the travel industry for 15 years. Then it disappeared, and my job disappeared, and I had to kind of regroup and restart my career. And it wasn't easy, but I did it. And if you need to do that, you can do that too. So don't panic. It can be done. I find that I loved my travel career, but I love this career just as much. So you'll be able to regroup, rebrand yourself if you need to. It can be done. So I've been in your shoes. I understand. I was laid off in the travel industry 4 times because I wouldn't let go. But eventually it let go of me. And that was the end of that job. Okay, so let me say, if you're coming in by telephone, what I'd like to ask you to do is to please put your name and your job seeker ID in the chat. And you look at your phone actually, and you'll see a little icon at the bottom. And if you click on that little icon, it'll bring up your control panel. And on your control panel, you'll see a place where you can chat. And that's how we participate back and forth in these seminars. So use the chat button if you're on the telephone, put in your name and job seeker ID only if you're on the telephone, and please send that to me, to the host. If you're coming in by computer, take a look at the bottom line here. We have you take a look at your control panel and look for the chat circle, and you'll see that round circle for chat. Just click on that, and you can put in any questions, any comments, anything you want to add to the session. Just feel free to put that in there. And again, it's only for people who come in by telephone to put in your ID. Okay? So thanks for coming again. What I want to talk about today are resources. Applying for a federal job is different. Something I want to mention before I get started, when I'm done with the presentation today, you'll be able to download this right off of my computer onto your computer. It's really pretty amazing. I know it's very technical. I call it magic, but that's what I think it is. So what you'll be able to do is download the whole presentation, so you'll get all the information that I'm giving you. If by some chance that doesn't work, we have another option for you as well. So don't worry if you don't get all the notes. So you'll be able to download this at the end. So we're going to talk about resources. We're going to talk about what to expect with the federal government. It is different from a civilian resume. Are you eligible is a really important question. Not everybody can apply to every federal job. What sections of the resume should be included and how are they different? That's really one of the big things. How the sections of the resume are the same as far as the ones you put in, but different as far as the amount of content that you put in. So they are different. We're going to talk about self-assessments. You may have to take some. We're going to talk about federal qualification standards. We're going to talk about how to track your job. We're going to look at a sample job ad, and we're going to look at a sample resume. So keep in mind that everything I talk about today, you can Google. And I know that seems like an easy answer to everything, but it truly is. So if we look at a form and you're curious, make a note and Google it to get more information. Because again, we're going to get this into about 45, 50 minutes. The actual seminar that you take with the federal government's an hour and a half. It used to be 3 hours. So there's a lot of details we can't get into. But again, everything's accessible on Google, as you know. Now, if you have not started an account with the federal government and this is the first time you're getting involved, you want to go to usa.gov. And it says government made easy. And actually, compared to the way this was 5 years ago, it's a lot easier than it used to be. So when you go in and you click on usa.gov, you're going to get into the site and you want to create an account, just like you create an account for any other site that you go onto. And you want to keep your password and you want to keep your ID, keep all that handy. The next time you go in, it's going to show up as login.gov. So don't be confused. The next step, just like any other search site, is you search for jobs. So far, it's the same. So far, it's pretty simple. So far, there's nothing new. What I want you to do is look at the second paragraph on the right-hand side. It says, so you found a federal position that seems like a great fit for you. There is a lot of work involved in developing a resume for a federal position. Applying for a federal job and building a federal resume is a unique experience. It can take days to apply for one job. I want you to remember that. I've been through this process. At one point, I applied for a position at the IRS. It took 3 days to get them all the paperwork that they were looking for. It took 3 days for me to finalize everything they needed and get it into them. So give yourself plenty of time. Make sure that in the very beginning, you take your time, and make sure in the very beginning you read the whole job ad. You're going to want to look at the job ad and quickly go to the salary and the job duties, but please read the details of the job ad. They include all kinds of details. The federal government considers your resume the first interview on paper. So you have to follow it very, very carefully. You got to follow it very, very completely. You got to be accurate. You got to be thorough. You got to be very, very, very detailed. Even more so than a civilian resume. So this pretty much says what I was just saying. Be sure you read all the position details, not just salary and duties. Your resume will go before a review board that will rate your match and your accomplishments. Different offices have review boards that review your skill set, and they will rate you as far as how you've communicated your ability to do something, and that will determine whether or not you move on to the next step in the job process. You must have the qualifications that they're looking for and show it on the resume. You need to be sure you're eligible for the position based on their requirements. If you're missing 2/3 of the requirements, I wouldn't apply. If you're missing a couple of points, I would apply. And I would focus heavily on what I do have. Keep in mind the federal government likes older workers. There's a place for everyone with the federal government. They appreciate experience. We're going to get into that in a minute. Be sure that you're eligible for the position based on their requirements. It's in the job ad. So make sure you read the whole job ad before you start going and taking off and applying. Your application is considered part of your resume. Spelling, grammar, and punctuation will all count. Okay, so it's a serious document. It's always a serious document. It's always got to be clean, clear, and concise. Now, on the resume, you're going to need your full name. They still want your mailing address. When you do a civilian resume, you don't need your mailing address anymore. But the federal government may actually mail you something. So they want your mailing address. They want a day phone. They want an evening phone. If you have 2 telephones, they want you to list both of them on your resume. A civilian resume prefers 1 telephone number. They're going to ask you to list your country of citizenship, and I'm going to show you some examples of all of these things. Most federal jobs require U.S. citizenship. There are some exceptions. We're going to talk about that in a minute. They're going to want you to include the job information, including the announcement number. Sometimes they'll ask for the title and grades of the job for which you're applying. All of that is listed in the job ad. None of that's required on a traditional resume. It may appear in a cover letter, but for the federal government, they want all of this in the personal information section, which is the contact section at the top. So again, I reiterate a few things over and over again because they're so important, but one of the things they want you to put on your resume is the job ad announcement number. and you get that right off the job ad. When you apply for a job, if you're a male and you were born after 1960, you need to have registered for the Selective Service, sss.gov. You can go on sss.gov and check to see if you've registered. If you are hired, they're going to look for your fingerprints. And they're going to take your fingerprints if they don't have them. They're going to ask you on your resume, when you fill in everything, that you put in your previous employer's name, address, and phone number on the resume. You never do that on a civilian resume. For the federal government, you're going to put the employer's address and their phone number. The same thing with your colleges and your high school. They want all the contact information for all of these places. Citizenship, again, generally it's required that you're a U.S. citizen. There are some exceptions. I'm going to show you where to find out about the exceptions. If you previously worked for the federal government, like myself, I mentioned that I actually worked for the federal government and the IRS. So if I were to go back and work for them again, I'd have to fill out a form that's called an SF-50, which is listed here on this slide. And again, you can Google that to get the details on it. But the SF-50, it looks like this, and it's a notice of your personnel action. So basically it shows when you worked there, where you worked, and all the details which you get from them anyway. So it's kind of a loop that you have to go through. But they need that because what's going to happen, the federal government gives you credit for everything. They base everything on scores and credit. They give you credit for your experience. If you were an administrative assistant 5 years ago and you're going for an administrative assistant position, they want you to put that on the resume. If you were administrative assistant 25 years ago and it applies to the new job, they want you to put that on the resume as well. Your resume can be anywhere between 4 and 10 pages long. If you have a lot of duties that actually are relevant to the new job, you could have up to 1 page per job in your resume explaining things that are relevant. Again, they're looking for things that are relevant, not things that are trivial to this particular job, not in general. Don't get me wrong. Your experience is fantastic and you've worked hard and long for it. But what they want is they want things that matter to them. And they're very particular about that. Now, you may be asked to complete a self-assessment questionnaire, and it'll say that in the job ad. It'll also show you where to go to get the self-assessment questionnaire. It's a basic screening tool that they use to see if you have the right basic skills for the job. It's basically a statement of your skills as they relate to that job. Generally, it's multiple choice. Each department decides if one is necessary. Each department develops the questionnaire based on the necessary skills for that job. The job announcement will tell you if it's necessary and where to find it. You want to be really careful with these self-assessment questionnaires because if you do not pass the self-assessment questionnaires, you will not move forward in the job process. You can look at the assessment questionnaire ahead of time and practice for it and get ready for it. So that's something I would suggest you do. You print it out, work with it, practice, study it, make sure you're comfortable with the material. Okay, someone said, what chance is a mature adult over age 55? The federal government loves people with lots of experience. I have to say they are the most mature worker-friendly hiring process in the country. They like people who have a lot of experience. As long as it's related to the new job, they don't care how old you are. They have openings for every age group. They're very, very mature worker-friendly. Now, this is a picture of what I was just talking about, the self-assessment questionnaire. And as you can see, it's just a piece of it because we only have a certain amount of space on the slide, but it's multiple choice, fill in the blank with your information. And it would go on for a page or two with multiple choice questions. Now, when you're building your resume for the federal government, I think a lot of people say, well, I don't remember what I did 25 years ago as an administrative assistant, but I was one 25 years ago, and that's what I'm applying for now. How do I find the details? How do I remember what I did every day? You go on this website right here called onetonline.org, and it's listed right at the top, onetonline.org. And you go on here and you see there's a box kind of just above the word crosswalks, and you can put in your keyword for your occupation. It'll come up with a list of knowledge, skills, and abilities for almost every occupation that we have. Up in the top right-hand corner, there's another occupational quick search. You can use that same information up there as well. And it will take you to a page that shows you what's shown here, knowledge, skills, and abilities. You can use this terminology verbatim because this is written by the federal government. This is the terminology they use. This is the terminology they understand. This is the terminology they actually prefer. So if you think, gee, what does an administrative assistant do? What does a Python programmer do? What does a software developer do? I can't remember. I'm having a mind blank, cramp. Go on to onetonline.org. Put in the name of your job title. Hit the enter button, and up comes several sections. It's going to tell you everything about that job. But the thing I want you to really focus in on is the knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's what should be on your resume. They want to know, can you do the job? Have you done the job? When did you do the job? That's what they want to know. You get credit for the amount of time you've done the job. That's why we prefer experience sometimes. The more you've done it, the more experience you have, the more likely you are to be chosen. Now, you can have 5 resumes with the federal government. And remember, every time you send a resume out to anyone, anywhere, ever, you tailor your resume to the job ad. Now, if that's news to you, I want you to sign up for my resume workshop, December 3rd. It's a civilian resume workshop, and I talk about tailoring the resume for every other type of job, but you need to tailor it for the federal government as well. Every resume you send out, no matter who you're sending it to, must be tailored to match the job ad because of the applicant tracking system. So again, December 3rd, tune in for the resume workshop. If you've never done a resume workshop for a plain civilian resume, please join us. Now, you can use a resume builder function that the federal government provides you, and they want you to do at least one resume in their federal resume builder. Some offices in the federal government only look at resumes from the resume builder function. That's why they require that everyone has at least one. You can have 4 others that you change and you tweak to match job ads. You can also change the one in the resume function section as well. But you need to have one standard one put in the resume function that you work from. When you go to the resume builder, make sure you have every piece ready. It says you have to get through a computer screen of your resume before you make it to a human review of your resume with the federal government. Most of the time, yes, it will go through a computer screen. Most of the time. Yep. Just because of the volume of applicants they get. If you think about it, think about the reasons why you want to join the federal government. The benefits, salary, steady work, civil service. So it's very competitive. There's a lot of people that want to work there. So they need to use the computers as well, which is good for them, but unfortunate for us. Okay, so when you go on Resume Builder, make sure you cut and paste off a regular resume on to the Resume Builder. Make sure you have all your information done ahead of time. Don't go in there and start building a resume. It'll drive you crazy. Make sure everything's all set ahead of time and just cut and paste it right in there. Okay. All right. Now, here's an example of what the top of a federal resume would look like. Now, you don't put the word example on there. I want to say that up front because some people think that it's part of what you put in it. You don't. You put your name, you put your street address, your city, your state, and your zip code. You put your day telephone number. You put your evening telephone number. You put your email address. Let me take a minute to talk about emails. The best email to use in a job search for anyone with any company is Gmail. If you have an AOL account, if you have a Yahoo account, if you have a Hotmail account, those are seen as old. Those are seen as not current. So what you want to do is open up a free Gmail account with your name in it. Make sure it's a clean, professional name in your Gmail account. Nothing funny, nothing cute, nothing related to family. You want to make sure that you have something very simple like Andrew Fisher, Python programmer. Andrew Fisher 21098, which is his zip code. Don't put your birthday in your email address. Everyone can figure that out, and your birthday has nothing to do with your job application. You list your citizenship, and then you take the position number right off the job ad. I'm going to show you a job ad with the position number on it. You're going to literally take the position number, make sure you get it right. Be sure you're accurate with the position number. Again, copy and paste, because they're always 10, 12, 15 digits long. Now, veterans get preference with the federal government. So if you are a veteran, first off, I thank you for your service. Secondly, I want you to remember that you put in veterans preference yes, and you'll get 5 points preference on your score. If you are a disabled veteran and you have the qualified papers to show that, you can get up to 10 points on your score as well. Now, you're going to have to provide, if you're a veteran only, a DD 214, and veterans know what that is. That's just your discharge papers. Do we have any veterans out there? Can you put that in the chat? Veterans get preference. Now, if you don't have military service, you leave it off. So you can leave that off. You don't have to have that. But if you are a veteran, you want to have that. Do we have any veterans out there? Can you put that in the chat, please? I always like to know if we have veterans because then I throw in some extra hints and tips. No, unfortunately, there aren't benefits to Gold Star families, I'm sorry to say. But that's a good question. Now, when you do your resume, you can use a very similar format to the resume you use in a civilian job. You can follow the same order of the pieces that you put in there. You start off with your contact information like we just looked at. Then you would go into a summary. Then after the summary, you would go into achievement statements if you have them. And the achievement statements that you put on your resume are those that apply to the job you're going for. Then you get to your work experience. Then you would get to your education experience. Then you would get to your volunteer experience. Use the same type of setup for your resume as you do for any resume. So we're going to go through the pieces here in no particular order. So the thing I like to focus on first is the work experience section. And the reason I focus on that first is because it should be your biggest section. And as I mentioned a minute ago, you can, if you want to, go back 10, 15, 20 years in your experience and put those jobs that are relevant to the new position on your resume for the federal government. They want to see how long you've been doing a certain duty. They want to see everything about that job that would be applicable to their position listed. I'm going to show you an example of that. So there are times when you would have an actual whole page for one job in your resume. You may have a 2-page resume. You may have a 10-page resume. It depends on how much you have to offer them. That's the difference. So again, go back and think about it. If you were an administrative assistant 5 years ago, put it on there. You were an administrative assistant 10 years ago, put it on there. You were an administrative assistant 25 years ago, put it on there. In the civilian world, you never, ever do that. In the federal government world, you always do. They want to see how much credit they can give you for how long you've been an administrative assistant, if that's what you're applying for now. Okay? So it's really important that you think back in your work experience. Personally, I would go back about 20 years, maybe a little longer if you've got some serious directly related experience. But you can go back further than you can for a traditional resume. It's really important that you minimize things on your resume that are not important to this job. Sometimes, if you have a bullet under a job and it's totally not relevant, get rid of it. When I was a travel agent, I had bullets for communication skills. I had bullets for research ability. I had bullets for negotiation skills. I had bullets for geographic destinational knowledge. If I were applying to the federal government for a job that was going to be administrative assistant, I would drop the geographic information mention. Drop it because it doesn't matter to the new job. So look at each line of your resume as you go through it and ask yourself line by line under each job, does this hurt me or help me for the new job? Does this hurt me or help me for the new job? If it hurts you, get rid of it. If it helps you, make sure you say enough about it. Can you talk about action? Can you talk about results? Utilize excellent interpersonal skills to communicate with hundreds of individuals. Action, result. Okay? So the work experience is really important. You're going to literally get credit for the length of time you did the job that you're looking to get into. And the more, the better. This is where we have an advantage for an older person with more experience. So again, you go back and list all relevant positions regardless of the date. Be accurate. In the work experience section, you can have up to 1 page. Again, you can do it if you need to. You don't have to. If you have nothing that's relevant that goes beyond a half a page, that's okay too. But feel as though you can go further if necessary. Now, under the experience section or the work section, depending on what you call it, work is better, but experience is also acceptable. Put in the job title. If you are showing an old job with the federal government, you want to include the series and grade, which again, you would get from your old paperwork or from calling the federal government. I'm going to give you that contact information or emailing them. You want to list the duties and responsibilities as they relate to the new job. You want to list your employer's name and addresses and phone numbers on the resume. That is different. You want to list your supervisor's name as best you possibly can. If your supervisor is no longer there, I would put in the words human resources and get the phone number of the company. Good question. Someone said, should you address the location you worked at or the corporate office? I would address the corporate office and put that in parentheses underneath the address. That's how I would do that. I would put down on my resume, I would list the city and state where I actually worked, but when I list the actual address of the contact information right underneath it, I would put corporate office in parentheses under the corporate office. If the corporate office closed, put the last place you saw the corporate office. To be honest with you, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. With the starting and ending dates, they want both. And they like you to use the month and the year. So use the format that I have listed here, 05-18. Generally, a traditional resume lists only years, but in a federal resume, you want to list the months and the years. That's what they're looking for. What they do is they count the amount of months you worked in a location to determine how much credit you get for that particular position. You're going to have to guesstimate, and that's okay. You want to list how many hours per week you worked, up to 40. I know many of us work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, but technically were you paid for a 40-hour week, 35-hour week? They need to know that because that's when they do the calculations. They want your salary from your last jobs. You might have to check with the Social Security office to get your record of your employment, to get your salaries from the past. You can Google that. But they want the salary for each job. They want each job as you list it to be listed, including the salary that you made. That's very different from a traditional resume, or a civilian resume, as I call them. That's the kind of information you have to look up. That's the kind of information you have to gather. That's why the first time you do an application to the federal government, it might take you 1 to 3 days to get everything together. They may ask you for a transcript. You will only send a transcript if they ask for it. How do you know? Where do you look to see if they need the transcript? In the job ad. There's a separate section in every job ad where they list if you need a transcript or not. Another hint I want to give you, in every job ad, there's a listing of who you can contact after you apply to be sure they received all of your material. Now remember that. These are the little things you want to read in the job ad. The job ad has a tremendous amount of information in it. Now, the education section, you can use up to 2,000 characters describing your education, relevant coursework, licensures and certifications, including dates, and they want to know number of hours attended when applicable. So if you took a Python programming program and it was 200 hours, you want to list that. If you took college, put in semesters. They do usually want to see your high school, and they want you to include the address and the phone number of all educational establishments. Okay, so that's much more detailed than a traditional resume. And you may have to go and look it up. You may have to kind of guesstimate some of these things, but they're looking for detail. They don't want to go look things up. They want everything on your resume, so it's so easy for them to hire you. That's the point to this. It's not to be torturing you. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to get everything in one place so that they can work off one set of papers to do all the checking. Okay? High school, again, listed even if you have college. List all colleges and universities, even if you didn't graduate. If you did 3 semesters at a college, put it on there. List the college name, the city and state, and put anticipated graduation, or put the dates you attended, and list the program underneath. If the program is relevant to the job you're going for, if it's business administration and you studied statistics and accounting, I would list those as well. If you have a major and a minor, list them both. They want to see all of your education. At the bottom, again, I mentioned this already because it's really important. If they do not ask for your transcript, don't send it. They're watching to see if you're following directions completely. It's a little point, but it's important. Veterans, if we have any veterans out there, I didn't see that we had anybody, but there's a page here for veterans. If you served in the military or you were discharged under honorable conditions, you may be eligible for veterans benefits. And again, this explains that in more detail. So if you're a veteran, I asked if we had any, I didn't get any response. So I'm going to assume we don't have any veterans, but if you know any veterans, please let them know that they do get preference if they apply to the federal government, and pass this information on to them. The very bottom is where they can go to find out the most information about veterans benefits. If you have awards and they are job related in any way, leadership awards, even if it's community service awards that might be related to the job, you want to list a section for awards if you have them. If you don't have them, you don't list them. It's that simple. But if you do, it says list related awards, honors, accomplishments, honor societies, leadership activities, performance awards, and your highest civilian grade in the federal government if you have held one. The government may require that you take certain skill-based self-assessment questionnaires based on the contents of your resume. Where do you look to see if you have a skills-based assessment? Can you put that in the chat? Where do you look for all this information? Anybody? There you go. Thank you. In the job ad. Everything's in there. That's why you have to read it thoroughly. You may be asked to include up to 40 items. They call them elements. I call them items, such as specific duties, accomplishments, and knowledge, skills, and abilities. You may have to repeat things. If you were an administrative assistant last week, you list the duties. If some of those duties are the same that you did 20 years ago, you list them again 20 years ago. It's okay to repeat on a federal resume. They like you to use 12-point font. That's just because they said so. That's all. They like you to use the month and the year format when you put dates on a resume. That'll work to your advantage in the long run. Now, this is a job ad. Now, this job ad went on for 10 pages. So I didn't list the whole job ad here. I listed key points that I want you to be really, really aware of. So the job ad, what I want you to do, and this is something you want to do to practice when we're done with the presentation today, later this afternoon, tomorrow, go on to your account or go establish an account and go on and practice reading these job ads. Practice looking for the details. Practice getting a feel for reading federal jobs. Look for jobs around here, but look for jobs that are in other areas as well, just to practice on. Because you'll see a rhythm to it. You'll see a pattern to it. So up at the top in the blue box, it says Management and Program Analyst, 12-month roster. What that means is it's a continual hire. It'd be nice if they said continual hire, but it just means it goes on and on. It's continual. It doesn't have a really drop-dead end date. Underneath that title, it says Department of the Treasury, something you want to be really sure to do. Make sure that if you're applying for this job, you go on the site and you research the Department of the Treasury. You go on the site and you research the Internal Revenue Service as well. At the end of the presentation, I have some resources listed for you, including the sites where you can go to do that investigation. Now, if you look right underneath the word Internal Revenue Service, you see overview, locations, duties, requirements, required documents, benefits, and how to apply. You can jump one to one and skip them. But as I said, and I reiterate, please read it thoroughly in the beginning. There's a big blue apply button on the bottom right. Don't be tempted to apply yet. At least read it through one time. At least get all your materials together. At least get everything accurately put together, then go back. Now, if you look at the purple arrow on the left, it says overview, and it shows the opening and closing dates. And those are literally the dates the job opens and closes. Obviously, this is a past date, but it would be current. Yeah, this really isn't a contractor job. A contractor job ends in 12 months, but a 12-month roster job just keeps adding people as permanent people all through the year. So it's not really a contract job. It's a permanent job, but they hire all throughout the year. A contractor job is for a certain length of time, and that would be listed up there as well. Now, under the open and closing dates, you look down there, there's a pay scale and a grade. You can look up the pay scale for Boston 2021-22, and you can Google that, the pay scale, and it'll show you. It also shows you right on the ad, the pay scale is a GS 13. We went over that in the first the first federal workshop. The salary is $87,000 to $129,000 per year, depending on your experience level when you come in. Underneath that, it says appointment type permanent. So it's not a conditional or contractor job. The work schedule is full-time. Beneath that, it says locations, and it says 25 vacancies in the following locations. And I had to cut it off, unfortunately, but Massachusetts and Boston were listed there as well. Looking at the top right-hand side, this job is open to the public. Make sure you read that part, because sometimes it's open only to federal employees. Sometimes it's only open to the military. Sometimes it's only open to displaced federal employees. Sometimes it's only open to spouses of military. There's all kinds of categories. So if you're in the public, you want to look for one that has that little picture of 3 people, that little blue item there that to me looks like a bear paw. That's the public. Underneath that, it says clarification from the agency, U.S. citizens and nationals. No prior federal experience is required. Someone says, is that where the salary maxes out, or is that the starting range? That's from the starting at 87 up to 129. Because of the grade level, GS 13, it goes up to 129. If you negotiated with them, it could change. But for GS 13, it starts at 87 and goes up to 129. You could be put in as a GS 14, and that is higher. Each level goes up. But as this is stated for today in this ad, they consider it a GS 13 position. If you needed more money than that, you could negotiate with them. If you had more experience, you might be approached for a different job that's a higher level as well. So everything is negotiable. Is that the max in that job meeting when in the job? Is that when the raises max out? Yes, because what they would do is they would move you to a new level. The government is set up by a grid of numbers, and you'd be moved. They give you a different title. If you got to the maximum and you were performing well, they max you out into a new title, a new grade, GS level. Now down on the bottom right, do you see the announcement number? Make sure you put that on the job ad. Where do you put that? Do you remember? What section does it go in? Anybody remember? Right, up in the heading, up in the contact information. That's where you want to put it. Up in your contact information, and you list announcement number, and you, again, copy and paste it because it is so long, you don't want to make a mistake. Okay? Now, like I said, this goes on for 10 pages, so we're not going to see all 10 pages, but I want to show you a couple of things on this page. If you notice at the very top, the second line down says cover letter with a hyperlink. You can click on there whenever it says cover letters are optional, no matter who you're applying to. If someone says there's an option for you to do a cover letter, you always do a cover letter. Always. Have it done ahead of time. Have it ready. This is something you want to make note of while you're reading through this to get yourself ready. Notice at the bottom of that very first paragraph, there's a thing that says resume tips. You can just click on that and it'll take you to resume tips for your resume. Thank you, government. That's a great thing to have for us. So it's 10 pages long with addendums. Veterans preference, again, I mentioned this because, again, veterans have served us. They get extra preference. This lists how you get it in that paragraph. The next paragraph, the CTAP, are people who have been displaced, so let's not even look at that one. That doesn't matter. Someone said, who should you address the cover letter to? It should be in the job ad. It should be the person that you're going to apply to. It should be listed for you in the job ad. If not, I would put Dear Hiring Team, because it would be really hard to find a supervisor's name in the federal government. But it should be somewhere on the job ad. Educational documentation. Notice the third line from the bottom in that paragraph. The third line from the bottom, it says, for a list of schools which meet these criteria. What criteria? Let's read the whole thing. For positions with an educational requirement, or if you're qualifying for this position by substituting education or training for experience, submit a copy of your transcripts or equivalent. An official transcript will be required if you are selected. So only when you're selected do you need to get the official transcript. Initially, you can send an unofficial transcript if they ask for it. A college or university degree generally must be from an accredited or pre-accredited college or university recognized by the U.S. Government Department of Education. For a list of schools which meet these criteria, please refer to the Department of Education accreditation page, and there's a hyperlink there. If you're qualifying based on foreign education, you must submit proof of credibility of education as evaluated by accrediting agency in the United States. And if you want to know who they are and how you get them, you can refer to the OPM, which is the Office of Personnel Management instruction page. And it's basically said one more time in the blue. Okay. So contact section, again, you saw this. This is the resume. Resume can be anywhere from, again, 2 to 12 pages long, depending on how much you have to say. Here's his experience section. He has, again, the bullets shouldn't be there. I apologize. I meant to take those off. He has computer specialist, April 2012 to present. He should have the month there. Sometimes I honestly do leave things off just to bring them to your attention so I don't forget. He worked for Selleck Incorporated 35 hours a week. He gives the address to get there, the salary that he made, his supervisor. Do the best you can. Personally, my last 3 supervisors have passed away, which is very sad, but I use the HR contact when I can for the companies. Then he lists what he's an expert in. How does he pick what he talks about? He takes it from the job ad. You key into what you can do for them. This is a sample of how you can put this together. This is a sample of the experience section. He keeps going. All of these things are relevant to the new job. You're going to be able to download this whole presentation, so you'll be able to read this in more detail. We're going to skim by this because we're kind of wrapping things up now. He has a separate section of accomplishment statements, and those 4 statements relate particularly directly to the new job ad. Don't put in accomplishment statements that mean nothing to them. They don't want to read it. But put in things that are going to give you impact. Here's a different sample, a different way someone put it in. IT specialist, customer support, GS 2210. It's just a different way of doing it. Somehow make sure all this information's in there. Here's their professional profile. Someone said, any suggestion on what list you would use for the company you worked with several years ago that was broken up and sold in pieces to different companies? Put the last place you worked, the last known location. And they can track it by that because that's where all the records would be for the organization. If they could track it, the last place that you know it was. Professional profile. Yeah, still list who your supervisor was, even though they're not there anymore. They just want to see part of this is really seeing if you follow the directions, because most people's supervisors aren't there anymore. They've moved up, they've moved on, they've moved out from 10 years ago. But they're looking to see, are you thorough? Take a look at this professional profile. This should be at the top underneath your contact information. Make sure you catch them with keywords that show that you can do the job. Employment history, this again is just another sample of how you do it. Responsibilities, you can make a section that shows responsibilities like this. Accomplishments, you can bullet it like this. Education. Additional training, if it's relevant to the job ad, put in additional training, or some people put IT skills. Programming languages. This is how you list those. Volunteer work, put it in if you've done it. It shows that you give back to the community. Affiliations, Phi Sigma Rho, 2004 to 2008. Let them know everything you've been involved with that's positive. Okay, here we go. So once you get everything in there and you submit your application, you wait 24 hours. Then you can go into your account again and look to see where your application stands. You'll see in your account the word advancing, if it's moving along. Received, if they just got it, but it hasn't gone anywhere. Reviewed, if it's been reviewed by the specialists already. Referred means it was referred to the individual office and you made it past the initial screening. Selected means you're the one that they've chosen. Hired means you're going through the paperwork. Paused happens occasionally when they put things on hold because all of a sudden they decide they're not going to hire for that position. That happens occasionally. And in progress is kind of a catch-all where they use it if they're not really sure where to put you, to be honest with you. But those are the next steps. Someone said I did a lot of high-level volunteer work. Is that valued in the same way? It's not given as high a point value, but it is given point value. So yes, it would be worthwhile to put on there. Someone said, should a cover letter for a federal government be the same one-page type structure as a non-government job? Yes. Yeah, the cover letter is not terribly different, but they do have that reference that you can click on and they'll take you through how to write a cover letter in the ad itself. Okay, I'm not going to read these because we're running out of time, but we went over all of these. Let me show you. Be patient. If you have any questions, outreach@opm.gov is the place to send them. They will get back to you, usually 48 hours, they say. That's where you can get specific questions answered. And you do have to be patient. It takes a long time to get hired by the federal government. This is something I want you to look at. Again, I'm not going to take time to look at it, but I want you to read this because it talks about how to avoid job scams in general. I put it in all my workshops. Here's a listing where you can go on their website and look at the federal application process directly from the federal government. Take a look at that. There's the Office of Personnel Management again. They have free job search webinars. They fill up very quickly. I would go onto that bottom URL and I would sign up for them probably in January right now for the ones you can sign up for. Sign up in case you're still unemployed. If you're not, you can always cancel. But don't be discouraged if you have to wait till January to get into an event. Definitely sign up for theirs. They're very, very good. Okay, and this is all the resources that I was mentioning, how to look up the index of offices, the Office of Personnel Management, the list of government agencies. There's a listing here of pay grades, how to apply as a veteran, resume information, all kinds of stuff. There's a military resource section here for anyone that is military. Again, take a look at this when you get this. I'm going to show you in about a minute how you can go in and you can translate, you can actually transfer this over. Okay, so thank you, folks. I want to wrap this up. I want to say, don't go anywhere. For those of you that are here live, we're going to show you how to download this. But for those of you that are watching this on a recording, this is how you can go in and search for our events and our workshops. Sign up through JobQuest. Thank you so much for coming and watching today. Really appreciate that. Take care. Thanks for coming.